La abrazo, acabo de perder mi hija.
She doesn't have any words. She just lost her daughter.
Looking forward to the twins coming, and then tragedy hit, and then double whammy hit, and now we're just trying to figure out how to move forward from here.
In the midsummer 2017, West Palm Beach was rocked by a tragedy that would leave an entire community terrified and searching for answers. On July 11th, police rushed to an apartment complex after frantic 911 calls reported gunfire erupting outside one of the units. When officers arrived, they were met with a heartbreaking scene. Lying outside his home was 26-year-old Javon Suku, a young father whose life had been cut short in a hail of bullets. But what seemed like a single act of violence was only the beginning of something far more disturbing. Because while Javon's family was still trying to process his murder, another life connected to him was already hanging in the balance. What no one realized was that his pregnant girlfriend with twins, Stephanie, was also in danger. And then, just hours after loved ones gathered to mourn Javon, tragedy struck again. On the very same day as his funeral, Stephanie was killed too. The back-to-back deaths sent fear rippling across the city, leaving people asking the same chilling question.
This unimaginable tragedy, really, that's what it is. A young mom, 9 months pregnant with twins, and coping with the murder of her boyfriend. All of this earlier this month. Suddenly, she died 2 days ago after giving birth herself.
Was someone hunting this family down? But little did anyone know, the most devastating chapter of this story was still to come. This is the life and death of Stephanie Caceres and Javon Suku. 24-year-old Stephanie Caceres was born in 1990 in Florida. She grew up in Palm Beach County, surrounded by family who described her as warm, caring, and full of life. From an early age, Stephanie was known for her kindness and her love of children. Friends often said she had a nurturing spirit, the kind of person who always looked out for others, which was a surprise when she would end up dead just after giving birth to her twins. She attended local schools in Palm Beach County, where she was remembered as a bright student with a gentle personality. Teachers described her as someone who worked hard, but more importantly, someone who always had a smile for those around her. And that personality would lead her to a field she loved. She worked at Wani, Batista Pediatrics in Lake Clark Shores for 4 years. During her time there, she became known for her kindness and gentle way with children. Parents trusted her because she always greeted them warmly and made their little ones feel safe. However, Stephanie wasn't the loudest in the room. She was the one who made people feel safe and welcome. As she grew older, Stephanie began working to support herself and her family. She wasn't wealthy, but she was determined. Her dream was simple: to build a stable, loving home for her and future family. She often told her friends that she wanted her kids to grow up feeling cared for and proud of their mom. Not much time passed before she would cross paths with a young man, and little did she know, that meeting would change her life forever. Stephanie met 26-year-old Javon Suku, a young man who shared her vision of love and family. He was born in Jamaica, the son of Dwight B. and Tamara A. Suku. He grew up with his brother Jaden Suku and his sister Shauna K. Suku. Javon was remembered by those close to him as someone who carried himself with confidence. He was proud of his Jamaican roots and often spoke about how much his family meant to him. Friends described him as charming and outgoing, the kind of person who could walk into a room and quickly make connections. He enjoyed music, sports, and spending time with people he cared about. But Javon also had a serious side. He wanted stability and dreamed of building a family of his own. He often talked about wanting to be a provider, someone his children could look up to. People who knew him said he had a protective nature, always keeping a close eye on those he loved. Tragically, his life would take a horrifying turn just when it seems he was getting all his wishes come true. Together, Stephanie and Javon built a life in West Palm Beach. Over the years, the couple had already welcomed a baby girl named Kailani, their toddler daughter. With Javon, it was not long before Stephanie became pregnant again, this time expecting twins, a boy and a girl. For Stephanie, Javon seemed like the partner who could help her achieve her dream of a loving home. For Javon, Stephanie was the person who gave him purpose and reminded him of the importance of family. Their relationship was full of hope, and with the arrival of the twins, their household grew busier, louder, and more full of love. At just 28 years old, Stephanie's life should have been filled with joy. She had the family she dreamed of, a home filled with laughter, and children who adored her. But instead, it would be overshadowed by violence and grief. And soon enough, that grief would deepen in ways no one could have imagined. On July 11, 2017, Stephanie's boyfriend, Javon Suku, would be shot and killed outside their apartment complex in West Palm Beach. The sudden death of Javon shocked the community and left Stephanie devastated. People who knew Javon described him as a young man full of energy, someone who loved his family and wasn't a troublemaker. Looking at the kind of man he was, people couldn't help but ask, why would anyone want him dead?
Story now, a murder in West Palm Beach. The father of a little girl who has twins on the way was shot and killed in his home. The gunman is still on the run. News Channel 5's Gabrielle Saran spoke with the victim's father. Gabrielle's in the newsroom with what he had to say. Gabrielle?
Kelly, Javon Suku's father told me he's feeling two kinds of pain. The pain of losing his son and the pain of knowing the killer is still out there. After homicide detectives took down the crime tape on Bear Lake's court, Javon Suku's father, Dwight Suku, started asking his own questions.
We're still trying to get the pieces together. Still trying to figure out, what really happened to my son.
West Palm police confirm Suku's son died in this apartment Tuesday night. Suku told me Javon's girlfriend, shown here with him at her baby shower, discovered his body.
She came and found him, face down, She got a daughter.
Their daughter, just a few months shy of 2 years old, doesn't understand what happened, and does her grandfather.
We have never been through anything like this. I try to keep my family away from things like this, but unfortunately, my son got caught up in it.
Neighbor Zania Ervilis lives downstairs.
Especially last night, I couldn't sleep, because I don't know where the gunshot gonna come. From my window to my window.
While Suku remembers his son.
My son is a good child, athletic, used to play soccer, brilliant kid in school. My child didn't deserve to die like how he died.
He has this to say to whoever pulled the trigger and took his life.
I want the killer to know, make no mistake, man, we're going to find you.
Suku told me Javon's twins are due very soon.
But this was only the beginning of a series of events that were about to unfold on July 14, just 3 days later. Stephanie gave birth to their twins, a boy named Javon Jr. and a girl named Layla. Stephanie took to posting on Facebook about her heartbreak, writing, "I just don't understand how someone can have the heart to leave 3 kids without a father, especially 2 that never got the chance to even meet him." Her words showed the pain of a young mother who had lost the person she thought would stand beside her as they raised their children together. Friends and family who read her post could feel her sadness. They knew how much she had dreamed of building a happy home, and now she was left to face that dream alone. People in the community asked themselves how someone as kind and hopeful as Stephanie could be, forced to carry such heavy grief. But then tragedy would strike again. Just hours after her C-section, Stephanie developed complications. What began as a routine procedure turned into a medical emergency. She had contracted a severe infection that was spreading quickly, leaving her fighting for her life in the ICU. Doctors worked tirelessly, but the infection was stronger than anyone expected. Machines beeped around her, nurses rushed in and out, and her family waited in fear, hoping she would recover. It was only after examining her condition that doctors realized how serious it had become. What should have been one of the happiest weeks of her life, welcoming her twins, had turned into a time of unimaginable loss and danger. Instead of celebrating new life, her loved ones were forced to watch her battle for survival. Meanwhile, as doctors were fighting to save Stephanie's life outside the hospital, another battle was unfolding. Detectives in West Palm Beach were still working the case of Javon Suku's murder. They canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors, searching for witnesses, and reviewing surveillance footage. But then a troubling pattern began to emerge. Neighbors reported hearing gunshots and seeing suspicious figures near the apartment complex days before Javon was killed. Some said they noticed people hanging around late at night, acting nervous or watching the building. Detectives believed the shooting was targeted, not random. Yet, without a weapon or a clear suspect, the case was fragile. Investigators had pieces of the puzzle, but not enough to see the full picture. They worked long hours, hoping someone would come forward with the truth. Police cars circled the area. Officers returned again and again to speak with neighbors, and detectives studied every second of security footage, searching for clues that might explain who had taken Javon's life. Meanwhile, Stephanie's family was torn between hospital visits and meetings with police. They wanted answers, but they also wanted Stephanie to survive. In the waiting room, her loved ones prayed, cried, and held each other close. Every time a doctor walked in, their hearts raced, hoping for good news. Friends brought food and comfort, trying to help the family through the long nights. The community felt the weight of both tragedies. Neighbors lit candles outside the apartment complex, whispering prayers for Javon and Stephanie. People who didn't even know them personally were shaken. wondering how so much pain could strike one family in such a short time. Little did they know the story was far from over. What began as two tragedies, Javon's murder and Stephanie's sudden illness, was about to become a heartbreaking chapter that no one in the community would ever forget. Stephanie's infection had worsened. Despite antibiotics and intensive care, her body couldn't fight back. For 10 days, she battled in the ICU, her family praying for a miracle. Her children were too young to understand, but relatives whispered about how unfair it was, that the twins had lost their father before birth and now might lose their mother too. But just when it seemed like the case had gone cold, a breakthrough arrived. Police obtained new leads suggesting Javon's murder was connected to gang activity in the area. Rumors swirled about retaliation and disputes, but no official suspect had yet been named. Detectives began to hear whispers about rival groups clashing in West Palm Beach, and some believed Javon may have been caught in the middle of something much bigger than himself. These stories added to the suspicion that Javon's death was not random, but carefully planned. Still, without solid evidence, the case remained fragile. However, what happened next would shatter anyone who knew Stephanie. On July 26, 2017, Stephanie would die, the very same day as Javon's funeral. The timing was devastating. Her family had to bury Javon while mourning Stephanie, who had passed away just hours earlier. The pain was almost too much to bear. Relatives described it as living through two storms at once, saying goodbye to Javon while realizing Stephanie would never come home again. Friends gathered in disbelief, struggling to understand how one family could suffer so much loss in such a short time.
3 young children, including 2 newborns, are without a mom and dad. Javon Suku was killed this month. Then earlier this week, his girlfriend gave birth to their twins, but died yesterday following complications.
Tonight, friends and family leaned on each other for strength as they lit candles for the young couple. This as the community comes together to help their children.
Our Wanda Moore attended tonight's vigil at Lake Worth Beach. Wanda?
It was certainly a very somber gathering of friends and family of Stephanie Caceres. Nobody said anything, but sometimes actions speak far louder. No words, just the candlelight and the sound of the waves. A heart and Stephanie's initials formed with candles shining bright tonight. Family and friends speechless after the sudden passing of the young mother of 3. Stephanie suffered complications from her C-section and died Wednesday, just hours after her boyfriend's funeral, who was shot and killed earlier this month. Stephanie's mother talked to us earlier today.
I have no words. I just lost my daughter.
The 2-year-old daughter and the newborn twins will go through life without their parents.
She always told me that she had a dream of taking care of me because I have diabetes. And she always told me, Mom, I'm going to take care of you, not knowing that I'm going to be taking care of her kids.
An unimaginable loss. Thursday night, Stephanie's friends and family hugged their loved ones even closer and tried to comprehend the loss of a young woman gone far too soon. Stephanie worked for Juan Batista Pediatric Office, and her co-workers there, they're gathering donations for those 3 young children left behind.
The twins, only days old, had lost both parents before they even had the chance to know them. Police now faced a double tragedy, a homicide and a maternal death. While Stephanie's passing was ruled a medical complication, Javon's murder remained unsolved. Detectives knew they were dealing with more than just a case file. They were looking at a family torn apart, children left without parents, and a community desperate for answers. Stephanie's family was crushed. In less than 2 weeks, they had lost both Javon and Stephanie. Her 3 children, a toddler and newborn twins, were left without parents. Stephanie's funeral was held just days after her death. The timing was cruel. It came on the same day as Javon's funeral. Family members had to bury 2 young lives in one day, a burden almost too heavy to bear. Family members described her as a rare and beautiful soul, someone who loved butterflies, animals, and being a mother. But the truth was even more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. Posterior infections are among the most dangerous complications after childbirth. They happen when germs enter the body through the surgical wound, and they can spread very quickly. Doctors explain that these infections can start in the skin, move deeper into the muscles, or even reach the uterus. The warning signs are usually pain, swelling, fever, or unusual discharge. And most infections appear within the first week after surgery. If not treated right away, they can become life-threatening. That's why Stephanie's case was so serious. What should have been a routine procedure turned into a medical emergency. Despite antibiotics and intensive care, her body couldn't fight back against the infection. For 10 days, she battled in the ICU while her family prayed for a miracle. Her story shows how dangerous these infections can be and why mothers need careful monitoring after surgery. Stephanie's tragedy was not just personal. It was part of a larger problem that affects many women around the world. Doctors say that with better prevention, quicker detection, and stronger follow-up care, many of these deaths could be avoided. But this isn't a one-off case of women dying during childbirth. Across the United States, stories like Stephanie's echo in heartbreaking ways, showing how maternal health failures continue to claim lives. One such case is that of Shasia Washington, whose death in 2020 became a rallying cry for justice and reform. Shasia Washington was a 26-year-old Black woman from Brooklyn, New York. On July 3, 2020, she went to Woodhull Medical Center for a routine stress test after her blood pressure was found to be high. Doctors induced labor with Pitocin, and an anesthesiologist administered an epidural. The procedure was botched, causing Shasia to go into cardiac arrest. An emergency section was performed and her baby girl, Chloe, was delivered safely. Tragically, despite 45 minutes of resuscitation attempts, Shasia died.
It's a scandalous part of our healthcare system. Black women are far more likely to die in pregnancy than white women.
And this big picture story today starts with the story of a young Black woman from Brooklyn who died last week during childbirth. How it happened, why it happened, now raising questions and anger.
Here's Eyewitness News reporter Stacey Sager.
She's 26 years old. How does your heart stop at 26?
Friends and family grieving and broken over the sudden death of Shasia Washington. The young mom-to-be appearing healthy and excited in the final days of her pregnancy. But last week, after entering Woodhull Hospital here in Brooklyn, Shasia died. It was after an epidural during an emergency C-section, and no one seems to know why. She gave birth to a healthy baby, Chloe, but the baby's father, Juan Lopez, and his family now left to raise her without a mother.
I'm laying at nighttime holding this baby that she should be here holding. It's not fair. It's not right.
About 100 protesters outside the hospital today who agree that systemically the system is failing mothers of color. According to the CDC, Black women are 2 to 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. One study suggesting that here in New York City, the situation is 12 times as bleak. And community leaders describing a situation, at least here, that has rapidly deteriorated.
Because 2 years ago, it became the only baby-friendly hospital in this section in Brooklyn. Right. We were making progress.
Woodhull Hospital did not offer any comment today on Shaiasia's case, except to offer their condolences to her family and to say they remain committed to maternal health.
But that's not this family's takeaway.
They don't have to practice on nobody. We're not guinea pigs. We're going to have to pass it on, and we're going to either you know how to do it or you don't know how to do it.
And they're left demanding justice.
Shaisia's case became a symbol of this crisis, sparking protests, murals in her honor, and legislative action in New York. The anesthesiologist involved later lost his medical license, but her family and advocates continue to push for systemic change. Both women's fight was a reminder that childbirth, while beautiful, can also carry risks that families are often unprepared for. At the funeral, relatives dressed in purple, Stephanie's favorite color, and shared memories of her life. They spoke about her laughter, her love for her children, and her determination to keep her family together despite hardship. Her funeral became more than a farewell. It was a rallying cry, a reminder of the dangers women face from both violence and medical complications. It was also a call for justice, for Javon's unsolved murder, and for better care for mothers like Stephanie. Her case is a reminder of the dangers of postpartum complications and the devastating impact of gun violence. It calls on us to support families in crisis, demand accountability, and never ignore the warning signs of danger. But just when it seemed like the story had ended, something remarkable happened. The community rallied together. Friends, neighbors, and strangers donated money, food, and clothes. A GoFundMe campaign was launched, raising more than $14,000 to help care for the children. People who had never met Stephanie or Javon felt compelled to help, moved by the sheer cruelty of the double tragedy. Family members spoke publicly about their grief. Stephanie's relatives described her as a rare and beautiful soul, someone who loved butterflies, animals, and being a mother. They said she had always dreamed of raising her children in a safe, loving home. And eventually, her story became a symbol of resilience, Proof that even in the darkest times, communities can come together to support those left behind. Stephanie Caceres was only 24 years old. She should have been celebrating the birth of her twins, surrounded by love and hope. Instead, she became the victim of a double tragedy, losing her partner to violence and her own life to medical complications. Her story is not just about loss. It's about resilience, community, and the urgent need for change. And ever since then, her name has stood as a reminder that justice delayed is justice denied, and that every mother deserves protection, care, and the chance to raise her children in peace.